at the end of their opening statement, Trevor Milton's lawyer compared Trevor Milton talking about Nikola as like a parent talking about a child, and said, if a parent looks at a 5-year-old and says that kid is going to Harvard, nobody takes him seriously and thinks that kid is actually going to Harvard at that moment. And said that Trevor was kind of talking in the same way about this kind of product of his labor and kind of a vision for the future.
I kind of knew this was sketchy. Mm-hmm. And I knew there wasn't a lot there. This is a Theranos level fraud, it seems. Hey, why did you platform the guy? And I was like, well, I kind of let him talk. And I asked him some very targeted questions. I do want people to talk and get their point across. And if the person is a fraud, as he allegedly is, and I believe him to be, seems like the likely scenario, my gut, my radar, Molly, if you will. Why would you launch another product? And so, my interview technique is just let him talk.
Literally my jaw dropped when he said gravy train.
I'm listening to this and I'm trying to parse it. And this was there were moments in this where I was like, this guy's a real idiot. I mean, this guy's a dope. That's literally what came to my mind, was like, this guy seems kind of dopey to me. This is lying. This is being dishonest. This is manipulating investors. And there is a unique word for this. When you sell securities and you lie, you put the word securities and another word for people who lie and then do a transaction. It's called fraud. So when you're lying and then you take people's money, then you're perpetrating a fraud. And that's securities fraud. And that means jail time.
It can. He's apparently facing 25 years in federal prison over this. He's a pumper.
This seems like intentionally defrauding investors based on his own coworkers, his partners inside the company, his team. It's super dark. I hope they throw the book at him. I hope he goes to jail. I think it's like a Theranos level fraud. And we need to flush this stuff out of the system. It's gross. I hope he gets, 10 years in jail. I mean, I don't hope for another person's demise. I just hope that criminals, who abuse the system and who hurt people get punished so other people don't do it in the future.
No matter what, this dude is going down.
In this video, more on the trial of Trevor Meltdown Milton, ex-door-to-door cult salesman, inventor of the real not a pusher, the only man who can out Elon Elon, a truly upstanding citizen, one of the most honest and ethical humans of all time, and definitely not a dumb motherfucker. And before we get into it, if you want to instantly unlock over 100 exclusive videos, plus my 10-year Tesla stock price targets and loads of other perks, including optional access to my Tesla valuation model, join our growing community of thousands of supporters on Patreon with the link in the pinned comment. You can also pick up some Tesla, Elon, and investment-themed merch in the merch store. So, grab some popcorn, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. First, we'll get caught up with the latest on the trial and some hilarious opening statements. I cannot believe this is real life. And then some fascinating updates and comments from Jason Calcanis on the This Week in Startups podcast, who, for those with a short memory, actually interviewed Trevor Meltdown Milton in one of the most low-key savage bait the guy into a trap without really making it obvious I've ever seen in my life. You are not going to want to miss this.
As a founder, Trevor Milton was known for making bold statements and displaying a charisma that inspired employees and attracted investors.
No. I take major issue with describing Trevor Milton as charismatic. The guy is anything but. From day one, every appearance, more red flags than a Chinese Communist Party rally, okay? The guy's clearly full of shit, clearly a walking manifestation of the Dunning-Kruger effect, clearly a narcissist, extremely egotistical, and obviously deluded, in my opinion. Now, to be clear, there were many people out there, especially retail stock investors, who mistakenly thought, this guy is charismatic, he's a genius. That's on them, and there's a valuable lesson to be learned here. If you're one of the folks who saw Trevor Milton and thought, he really is the next Elon, he's so charismatic, your radar is severely f***ing broken. You need to get help, seriously. If not, you'll make the same kind of false, inaccurate character assessments of other people throughout your life and make catastrophically enormous mistakes. This is very important. There is a lesson here. Some people have broken ass radars. They completely misunderstand people. In fact, one of the greatest examples of this is one of the actual dumbest motherfuckers on planet Earth. Some anonymous loser who goes by the name Tesla Charts. Elon's a fraud. Tesla's a fraud. Does a podcast with Trevor Meltdown Milton and literally praises the guy as a genius. Tesla Charts and Trevor Milton, probably the two dumbest motherfuckers on planet Earth. So, let's continue, but I really did need to get that off my chest. Trevor Milton, charismatic, are you f***ing kidding me? No, not a chance.
When it came to promoting his electric truck startup Nikola, he went on podcasts and news shows, making big claims about its hydrogen trucks and the fueling stations that would support them. The company brought in a lot of funding, and when it went public in 2020, retail investors flocked to it, raising its valuation from $3.3 billion to $30 billion.
Following on from my prior comments about a broken ass radar, if you happen to be one of the investors that bought Nikola stock, you've learned a very valuable lesson. When you bought Nikola stock, you didn't know what the you were doing. Hopefully, that's changed. But if not, take some time to reflect on why you invested in what was such obviously a steaming pile of excrement. In my opinion, of course, Nikola's stock price does not back up these claims. In fact, from peak closing price to current day, Nikola's stock only down a mere 93.08%. I was obviously wrong.
But now, Milton is on trial, accused of lying about Nikola's technological capabilities to enrich himself. He left the company in 2020. Milton faces 2 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of securities fraud, with the possibility of 25 years in prison. He's pleaded not guilty. Beyond what it could mean for Milton and Nikola, the case could have ripple effects for other young pre-IPO companies looking to get investors excited about their future. Here to talk about the trial and those potential impacts is WSJ reporter Ben Foldy. Hi, Ben. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, prosecutors allege that Trevor Milton made these big promises and misled investors about the technology Nikola had developed. Can you tell us a bit more about what those allegations are and how they came about?
Yeah, so the allegations came after a short seller, Hindenburg Research, and some whistleblowers put out a report alleging that Trevor Milton had made all kinds of misrepresentations about the company. And one of the U.S. attorneys, when they first unveiled these charges, said Trevor Milton lied about basically every element of the business.
Oh, is that all? He merely lied about almost every element of the business.
And in their opening statements, the prosecutors said Mr. Milton had lied about the technology that the company had built, namely kind of this early prototype truck, which he had said, was fully built, fully functional, and whistleblowers and prosecutors alleged that no, it wasn't, never drove anywhere under its own power, and was rolled down a hill for a promotional video. That Mr. Milton misrepresented the production of the fuel. There were a couple times where he'd said, Nikola was making hydrogen at $4 a kilogram, which not only was that kind of a unprecedentedly cheap price for producing hydrogen, but Nikola had not produced any hydrogen at any price at that point. They also kind of focused on representations Trevor Milton made about the quality and amount of the contracts and orders they had for the trucks in the future. And the last thing that they sound like they're going to focus on in this trial is a pickup truck called the Badger that was a big kind of motor for Nikola's big stock jump in June of 2020, but prosecutors allege barely existed beyond some very basic kind of preliminary steps towards it.
What do we know about the defense's strategy?
Yeah, so Tuesday was the first day that we really got a look at it. There were a few arguments kind of running in parallel. One was that the government's case is based on distortion. And they said kind of distortion of context, distortion of the words, cherry picking of claims. They also made the argument that it's not enough to have misstatements. You have to have intent, essentially, and that Trevor had not intentionally deceived and misled.
Talk about flimsy opening statements. I mean, seriously. Yeah, Trevor Milton lied, misled, deceived, said things that were literally not true, but he had no intent of deceiving, misleading, lying, and tricking people by the things that he said that were literally not true. I mean, seriously, what are they pleading, insanity? I think that's his only defense.
They also pointed the finger at other Nikola executives. According to them, Trevor was part of Nikola's promotion, was kind of pushed to go out there by Nikola executives and not stopped when he talked and, made some of these representations. So there was kind of a, why isn't everybody else at Nikola also being held accountable for this? And then there was also an element of questioning the motives of everybody who would be called to testify against Mr. Milton. We got a taste of that. One of the witnesses who, acted as a whistleblower has a financial incentive under the SEC's whistleblower program and also participated in shorting the stock at one point. So it seems like, the defense is keen to point out that people testifying against Milton have an interest in doing so. They took kind of an interesting tack. At the end of their opening statement, Trevor Milton's lawyer compared Trevor Milton talking about Nikola as like a parent talking about a child, and said, if a parent looks at a 5-year-old and says that kid is going to Harvard, nobody takes him seriously and thinks that kid is actually going to Harvard at that moment. And said that Trevor was kind of talking in the same way about this kind of product of his labor and kind of a vision for the future.
Pathetic. Let me explain why this is some 12 IQ shit. I mean, hey, look, in defense of Trevor Milton's lawyers, they got to come up with something, but this is absurd. Let me explain. Using the example of a parent saying, hey, this kid's going to Harvard. The insinuation there is this kid in the future will go to Harvard. That's very different from saying this kid is currently attending Harvard, is getting straight A's, has the best ever scores on any exams and tests that have ever happened in Harvard ever, is the world's #1 student. The faculty have voted this student as the most intelligent, smartest, brightest student that ever come through Harvard. In fact, this kid already has lifetime tenure at Harvard. The things that Trevor Milton was saying weren't this company in the future will No. He was saying right now, we're making hydrogen for X amount of money. We make our own this. We make all false. No person can reasonably argue that the things Trevor Milton was saying, as if they were true today, facts about today. It's a real truck. It's not a pusher. Everything's fully functional, which wasn't true. Our trucks make $1 million. Not true. All of the things Trevor Milton said to investors in the media were statements about now, not promises about the future. This is not something you can reasonably argue. And I really think unless the judge in this trial is suffering from severe cognitive decline, this is going to be laughed at. I mean, there are countless examples of Trevor saying things about the efficiency of the batteries, the size of the battery pack in the vehicles that don't even exist, the technology that we have today that they don't even have. And these are the best arguments his lawyers have. This is not looking good for Trevor Meltdown Milton. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, my friend.
Let's dive into one of those points you just mentioned. Trevor Milton, the founder and former leader of this company, is on trial. Why isn't the company itself part of this case?
I think if the defense has their way, the company will be a part of this case, looking as to kind of who in the room was trying to stop Trevor.
That's right, things are going to get very messy, very fast. If you guys are curious, there are videos of me on YouTube before the shit hit the fan, asking, why is it that I, some dickhead on YouTube, can see what's going on here and see all the red flags, see all the lies, the misinformation, allegedly, blah, blah, blah. Why is it if I can see what's going on, the executives of the company are turning a blind eye? Surely they realize what's happening. Why is no one reining him in? Why isn't Trevor on a leash? Why are they allowing him to go into the media and say things that they know to be false? You can't go, oh, I didn't realise. Bull fucking shit you didn't realise. You had a large stake in Nikola too. The higher the stock, the better for you. Let Trevor do his thing. Lure in these dumbass retail investors, get the stock price up, everybody wins. Until, of course, the fraud trial. I find it extremely unlikely that key executives within Nikola won't get dragged into this. I personally find it impossible to imagine a scenario in which all key executives within that company were completely naive and ignorant to what Trevor was doing when, as I point out, there were people like me on YouTube, many folks on Twitter as well, going, guys, hello, the shit that he's saying about the battery energy density is literally not possible because physics, here's the math. Hello?
Nikola did settle with the SEC and had an investigation into these allegations and paid $125 million. So I think Nikola, the company, did kind of pay its pound of flesh, so to speak. But even the defense themselves kind of pointed out was that Nikola and all of its disclosures, you know, these kind of reams and reams of financial documents would often kind of have a more hedged or careful or qualified version of some statement. And then Trevor would be the one on the podcast or on TV with the big boisterous claim.
Let's talk a bit about the people who did buy the Nikola stock, because a lot of them were novice investors, very excited about this company. Is that expected to be an important part of this trial at all?
I think for the prosecutors it is. They really are trying to paint this as kind of like, this was a stock promotion scam, for lack of a better word, that was aimed at retail investors. And one of the ways that they backed that up was by saying that, you know, Trevor Milton wasn't just, you know, on CNBC or just on earnings calls. He was tweeting, he was Instagram living, he was, you know, avowedly saying, I want to be the most open and accessible executive on social media. And so according to the prosecution, that was kind of part of this larger fraud to drive the stock price up by appealing to retail investors and Robinhood traders and the like.
I mean, once again, how many videos did I make? 30 plus? Same shit every time. It appears that Trevor Milton's primary goal at Nikola is to pump up the stock price and lure in dopey retail investors. Good luck arguing against that obvious point.
Nikola went public via a special purpose acquisition company, sometimes called a blank check company. A lot of other green vehicle companies went public kind of the same way, around the same time, with also big promises. Does the fallout from Nikola have any impact on them, on how investors or maybe regulators are looking at them?
I think Nikola was kind of the first big SPAC success in the space, and also the first big catastrophic blow up in the space, and not the last of either of those. You know, when Nikola went public in June of 2020, it soared in its first week and was briefly worth more than Ford Motor Company without having any revenue to speak of. And that kind of showed a lot of companies, I think, that there was a easier and quicker way of going public, pre-revenue in a lot of cases, and that the market had an appetite for those kinds of deals at that moment and really kind of drove valuations up for a while. So Nikola was the first of those to kind of come back to earth with these allegations that started coming out in June but didn't really get traction until September. And then in the time since, a lot of the other EV companies that have SPAC'd have disclosed SEC investigations or Department of Justice investigations. They've been hit by short sellers, even the same short sellers in some cases. And the sector is really kind of, it's not just one Icarus. It's been a bunch of Icari, I guess. Nikola was kind of the poster child, but the whole sector has been kind of wracked with these issues.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Now, some epic highlights from Jason Calcanis on the latest This Week in Startups podcast. As always, there's a link in the description to the full pod. If you've got time, check it out. In this video, we'll just be featuring some of the highlights, discussing Nikola, Trevor Meltdown Milton, and the fraud trial.
Trevor Milton, I didn't realize it, the founder CEO of Nikola, who was on this very program, not too long ago. He is on trial right now in New York.
So let's give a little background here. We're talking about, of course, the company Nikola, which went public via SPAC. It was meant to be the, savior of electric vehicles. It had a $2 billion investment from General Motors, and they were going to develop an electric pickup truck.
You did it, Mary, you absolute fucking moron. Now, just to be clear, at the time of this alleged deal with a Nikola badger, I literally made videos explaining this makes absolutely no sense. Why would GM be investing $2 billion in Nikola in exchange for Nikola licensing GM technology when Nikola is the company claiming to have the superior technology? This doesn't make any sense at all. Why would Nikola be doing this? Why would GM be doing this? I'll tell you why, because GM's desperate. They want EV clout. They're so fucking dumb. They haven't done any due diligence. They just want the deal so they get in the media. Nikola badger, yeah, cool. And it turns out they'd invested in what appears to be a very obvious fraud of a company. A matter of weeks later, a similar embarrassment for Government Motors, a collaboration with Fraudstown Motors, also getting done for fraudulent claims. Talk about competent leadership. Round of applause, Mary Barra.
And that all, let's just say, went wrong. A research firm, I almost thought that they had made this up when I read it. A research firm named Hindenburg,
real firm.
True story.
Yeah, legit.
Accused the company of massive fraud, saying that Nikola vastly overstated the capabilities of its technology and vehicles, claims its partners didn't do their homework. The stock went down 18% as of, I think, early September. I would imagine it's maybe a little worse now. Nikola, I think founder and chairman Trevor Milton had already stepped down as CEO, but was still the executive chairman. And so
there was a whole process of him exiting. But, when he was on this program, I kind of knew this was sketchy, and I knew there wasn't a lot there. And it was pretty obvious that the company ran up to 30, 40 billion, that it was not worth that. Now, I've been very critical of all these companies becoming worth billions of dollars before they have a product in market. That's Jason's law. If a company becomes worth more than $1 billion before it has a product in market, it could be a fraud, a scam. It's probably going to fail, right? And we have a long list of companies like that, right? That we've talked about.
And this is the one where they had the semi-truck prototype that just was not actually even real, right? It was
pushed
not
it down
drivable.
a hill, allegedly.
They pushed it down a hill, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes, this is the one. So now you're all caught up on the history of Nikola, sort of, because it's still being written.
I mean, this is a Theranos level fraud, it seems, based on my, and I sort of said this, but, people were really sweating the interview, like, hey, why did you platform the guy? And I was like, well, I kind of let him talk, and I asked him some very targeted questions strategically.
He sure did. In fact, I covered this very interview and basically said exactly what Jason was doing, because a lot of people were getting buttered. Why give this a platform? He's scamming people. Why didn't you challenge him on his things? I'm like, he's just asking good questions and painting him into a corner. Let the guy talk. Here's a video I made covering Jason Calcanis' interview with Trevor Meltdown Milton back in August 2020.
This interview is incredibly insightful. Jason Calcanis has a way of just asking the right questions and just allowing Trevor to talk. So let's see, what did he have to say?
So my interview technique here, if you want to see that interview, it was episode 1090. If you just type in This Week in Startups, Trevor Milton, you'll find it. And then I did emergency podcast when the SEC filed his stuff. But there was a moment when I was like, not a lot of this adds up. And I had asked him, hey, why are you doing the Badger or something, was like their consumer product. Now they had this idea, and I'll throw this clip in a second, Molly, but their business idea was they were going to sell like hydrogen-based trucks and a hydrogen-based system per mile and maybe have self-driving at some point. Anyway, they were going to sell this to, Anheuser-Busch or whoever had to ship a bunch of stuff. But their innovation was, you don't even have to buy the trucks. We'll just sell them to you on a per mile basis. So this sounds like, I don't know, maybe business model innovation.
Freight trucking as a service, boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
Yeah. Very well done. Yeah. Yes. So, you then have to think just from first principles, well, has this person ever built anything in the world? What have they built? And he kept trying to explain how their technology was better. So I just kept asking very basic questions. Well, why doesn't this exist already? And, how do you do it cheaper? And I just let him talk. But then they had released this badge and they started taking $5,000 deposits for it. And I was like, well, if you're doing hydrogen...
And the badger was consumer.
I said, if you're doing all this B2B, why would you start a consumer practice at the same time? And then that's electric or hydrogen? Like, why would you do electric? I don't understand why you would do this. Now, I had warmed him up a bit. Now, I'm not trying to set up anybody on this podcast, but in this case, I do want people to talk and get their point across. And if the person is a fraud, as he allegedly is, and I believe him to be, seems like the likely scenario, my gut, my radar, Molly, if you will. Why would you launch another product? And so, my interview technique is just let them talk. For anybody here, I want to let them explain. You do interviews. You want to let people explain their vision, then ask them a probing question. So here's the probing question I asked him. So now you've got all this cash on the balance sheet, and you've got all this runway, but this building a network of hydrogen chargers and coordinating the building of hydrogen trucks and satisfying a bunch of customers seems like an awful lot of work. And then, I'm not sure exactly the date you announced it. What date did you announce that you're going to take on Ford's F-150 pickup truck and Elon Cybertruck and the Rivian? Rivian is the other. Rivian. Yep. Sorry, Rivian. So now you decide, F it, I'm going to create an F-150, the best-selling car in the United States, I think, and obviously the best-selling truck. Why would you take on more work?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So here's the reason why. Our trucks are a gravy train with money. That's where all the money comes from is our big semi-trucks, right? The problem is 90% of Americans will never own a semi-truck. And so your portfolio of investors can be very limited. And we wanted to go and build a company that's going to be worth $500 trillion over, say, 10 or 15 years. And if you're limiting yourself to 10% of the market, you'll never do it, no matter how good your numbers are. The reason why people love Apple, everyone touches their product. Why do they love Google? Everyone touches their product. So what I did is I knew day one, once we started coming out, we had all this gravy train coming in from the semi-truck program. My question was, okay, that's great, but I'll never touch the average consumer. So therefore, 90% of investors will probably never invest in me. So I needed to touch the consumer. And so the truck is for the profit. The semi-truck, the pickup truck's for the consumer. And the consumer is the one who is part of the Robinhood portfolio, is part of the family office or whatever. And that's where all the valuation of the company comes from.
Literally my jaw dropped when he said gravy train of money.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to break down here. I think
there was no recorded revenue.
They have no revenue. So to refer to it as a gravy train is crazy.
Gravy train.
Yeah. Potential money printing machine would be, just a very basic qualifier there. Potentially, we hope will be a gravy train. We intend to, our intention is to make that. But this idea of touching the consumer.
Yeah, explain this retail investor thing, because that seems to have piqued a lot of interest. This is the clip supposedly they played Robinhood folks involved
this morning in court. Yeah. Because this would lend itself to saying he intentionally created a product to manipulate retail investors into investing in the company would be, I guess, the most cynical way to look at that. He was literally trying to court day traders. Like Robinhood is a proxy for retail investors, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like lure them, get them interested in buying
literally
this, making it a meme stock. I mean, he says it.
He doesn't think it. He says it.
Yeah.
This is not like he said it in a meeting like, hey, and there's a little bonus here, Molly.
Tumbled right out.
If we had a consumer product, like consumer retail might be in it. And I'm listening to this and I'm trying to parse it. And this was there were moments in this where I was like, this guy's a real idiot. I mean, this guy's a dope. That's literally what came to my mind was like, this guy seems kind of dopey to me.
Makes two of us, Jason. More on that in just a moment.
It reminds me of our cryptocurrency conversations with Sunny and Vinny, and how we keep talking about how when you're financializing a product before you have product market fit, you're ahead of yourself. You have a problem.
Great point.
What he is describing to you right there is how he's trying to financialize his business. Like I'm trying to offer a portfolio to investors in order to get me the capital that I need to actually build my gravy train that does not yet exist and is producing no gravy.
I literally felt like at that moment I was Joe Pesci in My Cousin Vinny. You know, when he's got somebody on the stand. I was like, that was like a Columbo moment for me. I don't want to. I really don't want to. There it is.
Yes.
I mean, if you zoom in on that
freeze
face
frame on this face,
I'm
where
like,
you're just like,
what?
Really?
It's like Columbo. Like, oh yeah, you ordered the chicken palm on Sunday night. Just a hint of a smirk.
This is J. Cal's pocket ace's face for anybody who gets invited to the poker table. This
is when somebody is
what it looks like.
When somebody re-raises me and I know they don't have it, and I'm like, come on.
This is just too good to be true. It's almost as if Jason watched my video reacting to his interview with Trevor and is now using my talking points. Now, I'm not saying he did that. He didn't. It was just so obvious to both Jason and myself what was going on here. The guy's painting himself into the corner. Some of the absurd. In fact, here's how I opened that very video in August 2020 with the exact same zoom on Jason's poker face. I mean, you can't make this shit up.
You can order either way. You can choose battery or hydrogen. And
But with hydrogen, how would you fill the tank if you have yet to build the network?
Again, this is almost too good to be true. Just to refresh your memory, here's what Jason and his guest, Molly, have just said about when Trevor Milton described the gravy train, and then we'll rewind to my August 2022 video highlighting my reaction to those same comments from Trevor Meltdown, aka braindead moron, Milton.
Literally my jaw dropped when he said gravy train of money.
Yeah.
What I did is I knew day one, once we started coming out, we had all this gravy train coming in from the semi-truck program. My question was, okay, that's great, but I'll never touch the average consumer. So therefore, 90% of investors will probably never invest in me. So I needed to touch the consumer. And so the truck is for the profit, the semi-truck, the pickup truck's for the consumer. And the consumer is the one who is part of the Robinhood portfolio, is part of the family office or whatever. And that's where all the valuation of the company comes from.
Am I imagining things here? Did he just imply that the only reason that they created the Nikola Badger was to get Robinhood investors to invest in Nikola's stock? That legitimately just happened. I'm going to watch that again.
Once we started coming out, we had all this gravy train coming in from the semi-truck program. My question was, okay, that's great, but I'll never touch the average consumer. So therefore, 90% of investors will probably never invest in me. So I needed to touch the consumer. And so the truck is for the profit, the semi-truck, the pickup truck's for the consumer. And the consumer is the one who is part of the Robinhood portfolio, is part of the family office or whatever. And that's where all the valuation of the company comes from.
For the founder, the ex-CEO, to be explaining that the primary driver for them creating the Nikola Badger, their commercial pickup truck, it wasn't to help displace gasoline and fossil fuel burning diesel pickup trucks, etc. It wasn't to change the world. No. It was to attract the 90% of retail investors who wouldn't care about the company otherwise, because who cares about semis? By the way, full credit to Trevor. The plan itself, absolutely brilliant. If you don't believe that retail investors are going to be interested in your company, sure, create some renderings for a product you apparently will be selling in the future or will be revealed at Nikola World in December. Of course, that's a great way to get attention, to draw in these new investors. Great plan, Trevor. Thanks for sharing.
A keen observer may have noticed the wry smile on my face as I ended that segment saying thanks for sharing. Translation: I can't believe you just said that out loud, you dumb motherfucker. Talk about incriminating oneself. Jason was stunned, Molly was stunned, and I was stunned that this idiot literally talked about the gravy train and retail investors. Trevor Milton's picture is going to appear in every dictionary under the definition of the Dunning-Kruger effect in the future.
Who's going to build a pickup truck?
That's not been announced yet, but it'll be coming out soon. That's it. That's probably one of the biggest announcements that the entire investment community wants to know about Nikola. And that hits very soon.
Okay.
That's a huge deal. And it'll be built at their factories through their supply chain. You're talking about billions of dollars in saving with the ability to build hundreds of thousands of these without any type of growing pains.
And it's going to be hydrogen, or is it going to be battery?
Both. You can order either way. You can choose battery or hydrogen.
But with hydrogen, how would you fill the tank if you have yet to build the network?
All right, enough of the trip down memory lane. Back to the recent comments from Jason Calcanis on today's This Week in Startups podcast episode.
All right, so
anyway,
let's just whip through this here, because
so what ended up
he's
happening
guilty in my mind.
Because all this stuff happened, right?
Yeah.
That prosecutors are alleging he lied to investors about the status of the company's trucks and technology on TV, social media, and podcasts.
Obviously.
By saying the company was doing better than it actually was, and specifically trying to lure retail investors. Prosecutors allege he manipulated the stock, caused it to go up, and became a billionaire. He resigned in 2020. He pleaded not guilty. He, I believe, stayed the executive chairman of the company, and now he's on trial, and its top execs, the top execs at Nikola are currently threatening to quit if he doesn't step down. And then, yes, as Nick points out, he called it an effing gravy train. Like, he didn't say, to your point, it will be. He was like, it's a gravy train. Don't worry. You can safely invest in this company.
There are a bunch of quotes here, sort of important, I think, just as we look at these. In a letter from the prosecutor to the judge, the current CEO, Mark Russell, is prepared to testify that he, the CFO, and the general counsel considered Milton's promises about Nikola's progress too risky. This is according to Bloomberg. Russell is set to retire as CEO on January 1st.
Current CEO of the company, who was there when Trevor was out there lying, misleading, deceiving, fooling dopey retail investors, allegedly, stepping down in January. For some strange reason, the phrase abandoned ship comes to mind.
Russell claims that before coming on as president of Nikola in 2019, he and Milton agreed that Russell would become CEO of Nikola, became a public company, yada, yada. According to the Wall Street Journal, Russell said, quote, anything he said in public was the equivalent of a press release or securities filing. Russell said, quote, that was totally against what I was bargaining for. I wanted to be the chief executive officer in terms of leading the company and making public statements. And so this is where the problem was. He went on this like crazy press tour and just started saying crazy stuff and not vetting it. You have a really, we talk about this with our seed stage companies, let alone public companies where people can trade the equities publicly. We tell seed stage companies, never exaggerate, own reality, present things as they are, and let investors make their own decision. And you don't ever want to be manipulating or bending the truth. Manipulating investors, bending the truth, it's unnecessary. We all are grown-ups here investing in companies. We don't need you to manipulate us. If you say, we don't even have a prototype, we have a concept. Great. Okay, the company's worth $500 million. Oh, we have a prototype. Great. Company's worth $1 billion. Okay, we have a prototype and we have 5,000 pre-orders. Okay, great. The company's worth $2 billion. We can price the company according to reality. No big deal. And we see this, Molly, just to make it, important as a lesson for This Week in Startups founders who are listening. You might be talking to customers and you might have a pipeline of potential customers and you might have targets, right? So you have targets. You want to call up Uber and DoorDash and get them as customers in Google. You might have people you're talking to currently. You've got Apple and Microsoft, and they have contracts. They haven't signed them, but you're in negotiation. And then you signed, Twilio and Oracle, and they're actually your customers.
Yeah.
And what we will see founders do is say our customers or companies we're working with, and they put all those logos on the same page. This is lying. This is being dishonest. This is manipulating investors. And there is a unique word for this. When you sell securities and you lie, you put the word securities and another word for people who lie and then do a transaction. It's called fraud. So when you're lying and then you take people's money, then you're perpetrating a fraud. And that's securities fraud. And that means jail time.
It can. He's apparently facing 25 years in federal prison over this.
Don't drop the soap. Let me know in the comments below. How do you think things will play out ultimately? Is Trevor Milton going to prison? If so, how long will he actually spend in prison? Or will he negotiate a plea deal, rat out a bunch of other people, blame everyone else, plead insanity, somehow escape conviction for fraud? Will justice be served? Or will this gigantic pile of human excrement somehow get away with it?
Because there is a difference between marketing, magical thinking, rosy predictions. Like, we're all familiar with CEOs who get up and promise that there will be really, really cool products in the very near future. No, not thinking of anybody in particular.
You better deliver.
And that you make these forward-looking statements that may cause your stock to go up in the short term.
Yeah.
And you might then delay the release of that product, right? It might not happen right away, but you do ultimately have to deliver. And there is a line between what is lying to investors and saying things like, this is a gravy train, without really, when you have no obligation to release your financials and prove that in fact it's not, or you have some obligation to do that and then it's not. It got to the point where apparently Russell, the new CEO, said that the company's own bankers did not want Milton to come to investor meetings because he wouldn't present what was on a slide deck during a meeting with SoftBank. And then Russell claims that Milton thought the company's bankers, quote, don't know how to sell.
Yeah. So,
like he's a pumper.
This seems like intentionally defrauding investors based on his own coworkers, his partners inside the company, his team, throwing him under the bus. And the bankers, in fact, saying like, this kid couldn't stay on the deck, which he couldn't. If you can't stay on the script, I mean, and I guess Masayoshi-san didn't invest. So when Masayoshi-san passes on your bullshit,
yeah.
oh, sorry, when he passes on your BS, red flag, you know?
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Masayoshi-san was like, not for me. Can you imagine? This kid comes in, he's like, we're going to change everything. He's like, I'm good.
He's like, I got a huge vision. It's going to be a gravy train. We're going to disrupt and I mean, disrupting long haul trucking is in fact a great pitch. That's a massive, and if you think you can do it and you can pull it off and you're not pushing your fake truck downstairs after you literally ran to Home Depot to get parts for it, or down a hill rather, like maybe, but yeah, he not having it.
Yeah, of course, all this happened as a SPAC, right? Exactly. And this happened during meme stocks. And I said over and over again, you got to look at each of these companies from first principles, got to look at the actual performance, what's been delivered. We have a long tradition in Silicon Valley. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Tesla, everybody, now Zuckerberg with his headsets. We all like Google with their, Sergey showing Google Glass. We like to show you a little bit of the future, tell you where we're going. And usually that comes with like, hey, you can order this product. It will be delivered in this time frame. And so when you do those keynotes, part of what you're doing as a company is you're planting a flag. It's the planting the flag strategy is how I refer to it. You're planting a flag. We're going to make a headset. It's coming out on the state. We're going to make the Model S. We're going to make the Model 3. We're going to make a Cybertruck. We're going to do each of these things. You can put down a deposit. We're going to deliver it on this date, or, it's going to take this amount of time. You can miss dates. That's no problem.
Right.
You better show progress. You better have prototypes. You better, have apps being developed for these things, and you better have a track record. So with Apple, Tesla, Google, anybody makes a promise, the stock market can say, let's look at the track record of that company.
Exactly.
And when you don't have a track record, previous company, this company, you kind of have to prove some things. And that was another problem here. Yeah. This person believed they were Steve Jobs. They believed they were Elon Musk, obviously. He named the company
Nikola.
That's the first name of Tesla.
It was the first name of Nikola Tesla. And I kind of asked him about that. He said, it had nothing to do with Tesla. And I was like, well, this person's a liar.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And so...
Just want to chime in here. Don't want to interrupt too much more. This video is getting super long. Might even break the record for longest video ever on this channel. But even the company's name, huge red flag, as Jason points out. Clearly, and I mean clearly, this was clout chasing. Capture some of that Tesla brand. Well, what was Tesla's first name? Nikola. Let's call the company Nikola. Why? Because we want to insinuate that we're the next Tesla. The fact that Trevor Milton flat out denied that this had anything to do with Tesla at all. I mean, really, unless your brain's offline, you can't be buying that BS.
Even with just the naming of the company, it feels like a fraud.
Right. I mean, as my favorite economic analyst, Matt Levine, says, just about everything could become insider trading or securities fraud, right? Like it is and remains in some ways a fine line. I think we're seeing that with like Meta right now. Like Mark Zuckerberg is out here like, we're doing the metaverse. I got my goggles. Like I got app developers on board. I'm spending $10 billion. If nothing ever materialized, it wouldn't be that far away. Right? Like everybody who's marketing, because when you do a presentation like that, you say, we're going to do this product, we're going to move into you are attempting, that's not just for like me, consumer. You're attempting to reassure shareholders. You're attempting to build confidence in your company and presumably get capital from public markets to keep doing what you're doing. So like there is a tipping point, and probably that is very legally defined, which is why this guy got charged and others have not been. But it's like an interesting, I mean, I guess all I'm saying is like, we've trained a lot of founders to do some version of this, and it can get harder and harder to sniff out the difference.
And I think especially if you're a new investor, you're some young person who's trading stocks for the first time, you open up a Robinhood account, you open up whatever account, you see a bunch of excitement around Tesla or a bunch of excitement around Apple, and you see them using this playbook, and then this person comes along using the same playbook.
And literally targets you.
And is literally targeting you.
Right.
Nail on the head here. Literally targeting, what did I call them? Dopey retail investors. One end of the bell curve. I was even tweeting about this. Great one from Twitter here. Elon Musk back in August 2021 saying, I thought 1999 was peak insanity, but 2021 is 1000% more insane.
And then, of course, being the obnoxious motherfucker that I am, I posted a intelligence bell curve and placed 1999 at low average, 2021 at low, and Nikola stock investors at very low, to which Elon Musk responds, pretty much. I said these insulting things for a reason, and it wasn't to make people cry in the corner. It was to make them to go, fuck this guy, I'm going to prove he's wrong. I'm not a fucking moron. I did my research. Oh, shit. And of course, most people just got mad, butthurt, and angry and super defensive. But a few people actually heard the message, did their homework, and realized they'd been sucked the fuck into a gigantic scam, allegedly. And many of them avoided catastrophic losses. Not everybody, but enough.
So this seems like he, in a premeditated way, said,
Totally.
This is why people buy Tesla shares. This is why people buy shares of Apple. This is what Steve Jobs does when he's on stage. Let me mimic that to send a pattern recognition to naive investors.
Right.
What I always encourage people to do is just look at actual performance. And you and I actually
That's
in
a great
VC Sunday
benchmark.
schools. What do we do in our investment meetings? How many customers do they have? When did the product launch?
Yep.
What's the churn of the company? Who's their lighthouse customers? In other words, who are the top customers?
Yeah.
Which company has expanded the most? Who has added the most number of seats or increased their spend? Let's just have discussions about the facts on the ground.
Yeah.
And
What's
in the
the
industry
story now instead of what is the story going to be in the future?
Correct.
Right.
And if we can establish what Chamath likes to refer to as ground truth. Ground truth in the military is like, hey, what are the soldiers seeing on the front line? Then we can move on. Now, here in Zuckerberg's, he doesn't need a defense here, but talking about Zuckerberg, okay, you've got this business that prints tens of billions of dollars a year in profits. You bought Oculus, which was an independent company that launched their first headset 7 years ago. You have X number of people on these 3 versions of the headset. You have this number of people paying for
We know it's
apps.
real.
Okay, we can draw a line between the future you're telling us in 2030, people are going to live in the metaverse, and everything that's come before it.
Right. And shareholders are also clearly saying just this week, no, thank you. Right? Like the public markets, because they can evaluate that track record truthfully, because they can evaluate the technology and how far it's come and, the interest in consumer adoption can then be like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and cut Zuck's personal fortune in half this week because we're not buying it. They were given the truth about where the company is going and they don't like it, right? It's like literally the opposite of what happened with Nikola, which is like, we got a gravy train over here and now we want this gravy train for you. They're like, they invented strawberry mango jewel.
I think, you look at Facebook trading at 12 times the PE ratio, 391. I actually had sold all of my Facebook that I got because of a company that was acquired, I think at 110. And that was like 5 or 6 years ago. Felt like an idiot when it tripled or from that point. But I just didn't want to own the company because I just am diametrically opposed to the founder's approach to running a company.
Funny Jason mentions that because I also previously owned Facebook stock and, I couldn't sleep at night as soon as I bought the stock and, you know what, got to get rid of this shit. And so I did for the same reasons. If you haven't seen my exclusive video available to YouTube members and or Patreon supporters, check it out. It's called Why I Don't Own Facebook Stock.
Yep.
And just didn't want to be involved in it. I couldn't feel good about owning the shares, which does matter to me. I'm not that much of a rapid capitalist. And now it's trading at 145. It's probably a bargain. If he were to lay off a third of the Facebook, Instagram staff, which they don't need, then all of a sudden the company becomes more profitable and then he can invest in this new future while extracting max revenue from the existing one. There's a story to tell there.
Yeah.
But this Nikola thing is just
telling
dark.
the wrong story.
It's super dark. I hope they throw the book at him. I hope he goes to jail. I think it's like a Theranos level fraud.
Agree.
And we need to flush this stuff out of the system. And,
He's not out here killing people.
Yeah, it's gross. I hope he gets 10 years in jail. I mean, I don't hope for another person's demise. I just hope that criminals, who abuse the system and who hurt people, get punished so other people don't do it in the future. It's not personal. I just feel like these white collar criminals get away with it far too often.
Oh, I absolutely do think they do. I don't know that he is any more I think what he's doing is incrementally worse than what we see all across business.
Is she fucking serious? Preying on people who are below average intelligence, fooling them into thinking you're the next Tesla, making fraudulent statements that they're reliant upon, not able to see, their radar's broken, they can't see, you're full of shit, costing dumb ass retail investors tens of billions of dollars in losses, ruining lives financially, people who couldn't afford these losses in the first place, hoping to get rich quick. I think Molly's on her first name.
I would say a magnitude. I wouldn't use the word increment.
He's not getting people killed yet. right? I mean, if he put somebody in a truck that didn't work, but also that's happening on the other. Anyway.
No, I mean, listen, if you build a prototype and you show a prototype, the car industry has a long history of showing prototypes. And most of the prototypes don't even get made. They're cars just
and
for
they're
like
not
the
real,
car shows.
and they don't drive. Like, I'm just saying, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, the guy oversold. He tried to pump up his stock in order to get a bunch of capital so that he could build vehicles, because it's very hard and capital intensive and extremely technologically difficult to build these vehicles. And that is a familiar story. That's all I'm saying.
She can't be f***ing serious. Likening Trevor Milton's actions to a founder just exaggerating a little bit, and idiotically assuming that the reason he was trying to pump up the stock price of Nikola wasn't to enrich himself, but to generate capital for the company to actually execute on their plans. Are you unaware that Trevor Meltdown Milton almost instantaneously sold stock in Nikola, bought the biggest f***ing house ever in Utah, literally the most expensive home ever purchased, talked in interviews about others within the company not wanting him to be worried about money, have his house paid off, literally describing a financial incentive. The reason for cashing out stock, the red flag of red flags, was so he wasn't worrying about having a home to live in, worrying about his own money. I swear, she's literally high.
Like a lot.
If you put
founders and CEOs do this.
So fake it till you make it is a strategy in Silicon Valley. And fake it till you make it, it's more of a confidence building exercise than a con game. So act like you're going to succeed. Come to work every day. What fake it till you make it means is, in its best interpretation, is come in with the intent that you're going to win. Come in with the intent that you're going to raise that Series A. Be confident. It doesn't mean commit fraud.
Absolutely fucking nailed it. There's a big difference between being confident, really believing in your vision, setting huge goals and telling people about your goals, and committing securities fraud.
And so I think that term, fake it till you make it.
Say, this is my plan. I'm going to manifest my plan. This is my goal, right? Like we do want to know from people, what is your future goal? We want to know what their business is now. Yeah. And we want to know what is the thing that's going to turn this into a rocket ship.
Yeah, be audacious.
Be audacious.
But own the actual reality. And here you have multiple examples of manipulating the reality. They said that they didn't even have a prototype.
Incrementally. I don't think this is like
no, it's
Theranos level. This is not the worst behavior I've ever seen.
I just can't take anything else she says seriously. Sorry, Molly. Respect's fucking gone. Your credibility's absolutely fucking gone.
Now, he did some other dirty stuff, like he sold his tens of millions of his own shares during the SPAC process. He clearly did not tell the truth with respect to investors, right? Like to come on your show and say, full stop, the semi trucks are a gravy machine or whatever. Like that's
a gravy train.
That was not
that's
true.
Not cool. Yeah.
It was not making money.
All right, listen.
Anyway,
agree to disagree. It's incremental,
we can differ about magnitude.
Yeah.
But no matter what, this dude is going down.
Well, at least we can agree on one final point. This guy certainly is going down. As I said, enjoy your freedom while it lasts, Trevor. I never did go clean that beach. Anyway, I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this video. As promised, I'll continue to cover the Trevor Meltdown Milton fraud trial. I look forward to seeing this finally conclude. Still not 100% sure how it goes, to be honest. I don't have as much faith in the legal system as I probably should. I guess we'll just see how things play out. As I said earlier in this video, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. If there were an Olympics for stupid games, Trevor Milton would win the gold fucking medal. If you've enjoyed this record-breaking video, I'm pretty sure it is the longest I've ever posted on YouTube, excluding live streams. You can support the channel by joining Patreon with the card in the corner or the link at the pinned comment and instantly unlock well over 100 exclusive videos, instant up-to-date access to my Tesla stock price targets, and loads of other content and perks. And FYI, new Q&A has just dropped. Check it out. So, see you over on Patreon. I'm Stephen Mark Ryan. This is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel and instantly unlock over 100 exclusive videos, plus my 10-year Tesla stock price targets and loads of other perks, including optional access to my Tesla valuation model, join our growing community of thousands of supporters on Patreon with the link in the pinned comment. You can also pick up some Tesla, Elon, and investment theme merch in the merch store. And if you're still watching, you're awesome. Please let me know your thoughts on today's video in the comments below, and click the card on screen now to watch the next video.